Hi everyone, welcome back to Camp Conversations, where we focus on resilience in frontline workers. Today I am so excited to have a friend, partial colleague, Chanda Winters. Chanda is a social worker in healthcare, and our conversation today is going to focus, like all of our conversations, on the spark that brought her into social work, how there are times of challenge when we're balancing work life, professional life, and home life, and some strategies that we're going to steal from her around what she does when those moments happen and when we find ourselves creeping towards burnout. So, Chanda, is there anything else that I should say to introduce you to our audience?
I think that's great. Thanks, Dana.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I first want to start off by just leaning into that question of what brought you into social work.
Yeah. I grew up in Saskatchewan, and my mom was she ran nonprofit organizations, quite large nonprofit organizations in Saskatchewan. So I grew up, learning to help people and support the community. And so I was young when I graduated high school and didn't know what to do, and decided to head into social work. And then after my first year, I tried to get into education and was not successful. And so I stayed in social work, and I'm glad I did.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that. I love that you tried to get into education and you're downplaying some really key pieces that I think I've heard from every person that has been on this podcast so far. Is there seems to be two reasons why people get into this frontline work. One is either they've had an incident in their life that they were exposed to someone in that field, and that person really helps them, and they're now like, okay, now I want to give back in the same way. Or they grew up in a family that expressed these values of supporting others, and I really hear that in your family. So yeah. I'm curious, what kind of nonprofit did your mom?
Yeah, so my mom ran the Saskatchewan Red Cross for 35 years, I believe. Yeah, and I was, that kid that was 3 years old going and volunteering with her. As I grew up going to events, she loved to introduce her kids to that line of work, whether it be fire and flood support, bullying prevention, swimming lessons, everything. So we grew up in a very small town, and that was always instilled in us. And now my mom runs the Community Foundation for the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, which is a passion of hers, as well as bringing in, leaning into that nonprofit community work as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And actually that prompts a question for me, because I know something else about you that I didn't add to the introduction, was that you also do some volunteer work for...
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I, when I first moved to BC, I was pregnant with my second kid, and I, just needed something for me and I wasn't working, and so I was at a coffee shop that had a stamp on their cup for the Elk Valley Suicide Task Force, and I had a close family tie to suicide recently when we moved here, and so I decided this might be a good transition into meeting people in the community, helping to support, and then kind of bringing in that connection. And so I continue to volunteer with them periodically throughout the years.
And so for people listening, we do get this question a lot about additional resources. We will link Suicide Task Force in our notes. So if you're curious about what they offer and their support services, then you can check it out. And so you, another thing that I left out of your introduction, balance parenthood, you balance volunteering for the Suicide Task Force, and social work. That's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah, it is. And I love it.
Yeah. And you really, it sounds like one of your biggest driving forces is this value of giving back, and then I heard you say connection.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like I said, when we moved here, I have 2 children, 7 and 3, and when we moved here, I was pregnant with my second, obviously wasn't able to work, really wanted to work after having my second child, and as we know, daycare is really hard to find. But I worked really hard to I got a position with healthcare here as a social worker, and found that I just wanted to persevere so that I could continue that piece of my life, that family connection of like, my mom always worked really hard and showed us that value, and then also I had that myself and needed that purpose of work, that connection with other people, and helping the community and hopefully doing some good.
Yeah. And okay, I'm gonna ask you maybe a little bit of a tough question.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing something that I can connect to.
Yeah.
Is that currently where both of us practice is a relatively small town. And we are drawn to this work. So one of the sparks of us doing this work is that we get to give back, support people, live that value. Sometimes in both my role and I'm guessing in your role, some of the people that we support, we have to challenge current things happening in their lives, which doesn't always feel great for the people that we're supporting. And so sometimes helping doesn't always, it's not sort of the rosy picture that we had when we first entered the field. So like, I think we all, when we first go into the field, are like, whether it's education, social services, mental health services, we're like, everyone that I support is going to be stoked on my support. I'm going to bring it's going to be rainbows and butterflies. I'm going to bring all this positive stuff. And then we realize sometimes it's not. Yeah. And it's really difficult.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. Does that impact you at all?
Yes, definitely. I think with some of these challenging situations, I once had a doctor, recently actually, had a doctor say to me, like, you can handle, these are not his words because I won't remember his specific words, but you can handle more significant situations if you feel like you are supported and connected and you are not alone. And I think I really relate that to your work, Dina, and that sense of belonging. And I think, this week I had a really challenging situation that I had to endure, and in that small rural community, it does just add that layer of just worry, I guess, because you are trying to support people in a positive way, and sometimes that looks different in each situation. Anyways, having that like connection to not feel lonely, and whether there's not many social workers in this community, but there is people virtually, there's colleagues like you, there is doctors, nurses, all different professions. And so I think, as challenging as that is, leaning on other people that understand the rural work is what maybe helps to persevere through some of those significant situations.
Yeah, I want to take 2 things out of what you said. So one is building a community around you that gets sort of your position and where the challenges are within that position. Suicide Task Force, I hear this question a lot from you guys, is like, how are you really doing?
Yeah.
And so having a community around you that you can give that honest answer to, how am I really doing?
Totally.
Because there are going to be huge ebbs and flows when you're in frontline positions where you are dealing with people, often when they're in a difficult place. And then another one, just you were saying you got a piece of advice, and really that's a big focus of mine, is belonging. And so connection is a key piece of belonging. Another key piece goes back to our values and our purpose. And one piece of advice I got early in my career was to write the value or the purpose that brought me to the work and stick it somewhere relevant to me. So I have one in my desk, and then I have one at home. And so when I have these horrible days, not that today's horrible, I really like talking to you. But when I have days where I question what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, I can go back and look at that value, that kind of big picture overarching purpose. And I can ask myself, even though today was tough, the interaction was tough, is it still living this value?
Yeah,
and it becomes my own assessment tool.
I love that.
Yeah,
so great.
So audience listening, 2 tools that we just stole there. Connection around you that you can honestly answer how you're really doing. Ideally, people in a similar type profession, or if not the same profession. And then 2, having somewhere where you really dive into what is that spark that originally brought you to the work? What is that value? And can you have that somewhere to remind yourself on days when it's really tough?
Yeah.
If we go, back to sort of the values that bring you into the work, and giving back is a huge piece of them. I think another thing that we confront a lot with when I'm doing these interviews with people in the field is that a lot of us are givers. And so, I like a smile at that. And so then we do these drills. So, I mean, in the beginning, you're probably in your 20s and you're in the giver mode and you're like, yeah, I can give. And then you start to move up in age and you get other responsibilities, whether that's kids, whether that's partnerships, whether that's friendships. And then you also recognize that how much more you have to focus on yourself and your own health and well-being. Do you ever fall into that give trap? Do you align? I'm seeing that you align with the giver.
Definitely, Dana. I think I have had I get myself, it's interesting because I'll get myself like stuck in that like work mode where you're giving. And then as we started like talking about that burnout and you start to like notice some of those signs of burnout. And then I think I was saying this to someone the other day, I think I actually get to the point where I get worse at I give more, I guess, not worse at giving, but I give more that I can't possibly have the capacity to, be a good wife, a good mom, a friend, and still have that compassion and empathy towards the people that I'm supporting. And so I think that, I definitely get trapped in that at times.
Yeah. What do you, I kind of have a flag for it. Like one thing that I've started noticing about myself, and as I move closer to it, I can feel this little piece of resentment that crops up, not necessarily towards people within work, more in my home and personal life. Like if friends are like, do you want to hang out? And I don't have anything left to hang out. I almost am resentful of the fact that they've asked me to hang out. I'm like, don't you get it? Or like with my husband or with my kids and they want to play. And I know, I don't notice that I'm burnt out. I first notice the resentment towards them asking me to do something that I normally like to do is my first sign that I'm moving to burnout. Do you have?
Yeah, it's funny that you're saying that because I was thinking about this morning. I think I have signs, and I've told like close people in my life these signs too.
And now I'm asking you to tell a public audience.
No, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Is I am a person that if people reach out, like texts, whatever, I just like almost pull back, which is not typical of me. I'm the person that will answer, like not right away, but I'll answer for sure. And so that's one thing. And then on a more recent, like, probably burnout, I would call it. I noticed that I would come home and I would have no compassion and empathy towards my children. And that almost makes me emotional because that was a point where I was like, those are the people in my life that deserve it. Everyone deserves compassion and empathy, but I think like they're the closest to me that I care about, being that person for, I guess. And then that's where I was like, okay, I need to figure this out, right? I need some coping here. And
I'm just processing that because I think that's such a valuable thing and such a common thing that I hear is that our first signs of burnout are usually signs at home, signs outside of the office, and how important it is to listen to it. And going back to the value piece, sometimes to kick my logic brain back in, I almost need to rank it, because if I think of my own life history, like so many of us, we really did have a lot of emphasis on performance, like academic performance, athletic performance. And so our brains, when we were young, were quite focused on this is the area to perform. As a child, it wasn't so much like, how are you doing in terms of your love relationship with your parents and your siblings? Like there wasn't that much emphasis. And then that transitions into adulthood. But sometimes my brain still gets stuck on my worth is based on how I perform in the workspace. And so sometimes I almost need to have those values visible for me because in my logic brain, I'm like, no, the most important value is my relationship with myself and relationship with my family and my friends, and then work. But when I start to move to that difficult place of exhaustion, of burnout, whatever we want to call it, I do a flip.
And I think my boundaries that I worked so hard on trying to develop, and I continue to work to try and develop in all areas of my life, start to get very muddled. And I think that's my sign then that I'm like, I'm pouring too much. I do still need to go to the washroom every day when I'm working. Like I have to pee, I have to eat lunch. But those things start to kind of go to the wayside, which is so ridiculous. But that's what you do.
I think we were just having this conversation about not remembering to eat lunch, and then another one actually that you bring to my attention that's really embarrassing that I'll share with everyone. I also notice when I'm starting to slip down that slide is I will bring my phone with me to the bathroom. Like I can't even go to the bathroom without being like, oh, I should check that email or follow up. And I'm like, how disturbing is that? No, leave the phone outside of the bathroom. Like, let yourself just go to the bathroom.
Totally.
But
and if you don't eat and you don't go to the washroom, you're going to be uncomfortable and you're not going to, show up for those appointments that you do have with the people that you're supporting. But easier said than done.
Easier said than done. And I mean, our whole piece at camp is to be full from within, because when we're full from within, so when we've looked after ourselves, when what's most important to us is full, then we have the capacity to give. And I think sometimes with burnout, we hit that stage where we're no longer full, and then the capacity to give starts to push back at maybe first at home, maybe first in the workplace, but also on like the flip side of this analogy of like the capacity, if we kind of fill up with the negative, then we tend to do that overflow of the negative, and usually that overflow happens on the people we love most. And for me personally, that is like snappiness at my husband and at my kids. Right?
Yeah, me too.
And I mean, those are all really tough signs. So all right, so we have one more tool to add to that toolbox. So we have that connection to people around us that really understand where we're coming from, that we can honestly say how we're doing. And we have that value that brought us to our work. And now we have this third of sort of ranking what is most important to us in our life, and knowing of when we're moving towards burnout, how that ranking might start to look disproportionate, and those little signs that we're moving towards burnout. I really love that we were able to pull some takeaway strategies from this conversation. Do you think that there's anything else that we should share before we wrap up to frontline professionals that might be having that questioning whether they should stay in their field or are now in that struggling space?
I think, like you said to me and lots of people probably before, is like, taking care of yourself, your family, the people around you, and still doing what feels right for you, like that purpose of, helping the community while still having that connection to your family and your friends and yourself, right? Like, we can show up better if we're better for others. Yeah.
And I think that ties me to maybe our last, I'll use this as a wrap up point, is that something I really connect to is this idea of less is more. And I find so often when we're at a space of burnout and struggle, we think about, how do I add something to my plate to get me out of this? Yeah. Like, I should be doing this extra thing, like going to the gym or scheduling this extra call. And I say, first look at, what can you take away? What can you take out of your life? Can you take a mental health day? Can you have some downtime? Can you go somewhere with your family where you're away from people being able to contact you? And then knowing that when we do start adding it's the little habits that move us out. And so many of those little habits, like for me, I right away think I need to add a little more exercise. Yeah. And in my head I go, that has to be an hour-long session. But the reality is, it doesn't. Sometimes it just has to be little movements. Totally. Or little changes.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels good.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on here today. I know our audience is going to take away from these 3 strategies. Thank you for sharing about the spark that brought you to social work and to your volunteer work with Suicide Task Force. And again, we'll connect Suicide Task Force into our show notes so that you guys can learn more about it. And yeah, thanks, Chanda.
Thanks for having me and being a great friend.
Awesome.